Meet Laura. She's the Dean of Johnson and C. Smith University's Metropolitan College. She has started e-learning bachelor's degree programs. She's expanded offerings for non-native English speakers, and she's established a network for military students and their families. But most importantly, she knows all of her students.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Again, I'm Laura Colson McLane, Dean of Metropolitan College of Professional Studies, so we are continuing to expand. We are at Johnson C. Smith University right here in Charlotte. I am a native Charlottean, so being here in this presence, being here and speaking about higher education, of course, is near and dear to my heart as we work to increase social mobility for persons in this community. In 2008, our former president, Ronald L. Carter, decided that we needed to be more intentional about focusing in on adult learners in higher education. So in 2009, 2010, the previous dean established Metropolitan College on our campus. JCSU has been here in this community for over 150 years as a historically black college and one of the universities in the state of North Carolina. So with this intentionality, we enrolled 11 students in 2009, 2010 who were the non-traditional age, 25 and older. At that time, our university had not adjusted to the fact that adult learners would be on campus. They were used to the traditional time frames, used to the traditional settings of a semester, and we had to be intentional in Metropolitan College to think outside of the box as to ways that we could create a hub for adult learners that would be safe for them, comfortable for them, and allow them to grow and learn as adults in a different environment. I first have to thank, of course, Alicia James for having us here, or having me here, but I also have to thank Hope Williams, who is the president of North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities. A lot of times when we talk about higher education, we hear more about what public institutions are doing, but we are a sector that works collaboratively as private institutions that can sometimes move the needle faster than public institutions. And I think that's one reason that we're here and kind of leading the way in adult education. So again, in 2009, 2010, we established Metropolitan College, but we were very intentional about listening to the student. We can do surveys, get data all day long, but until you truly listen to the person who is walking that walk, you cannot make change. You have to remove yourself, you have to remove your perceptions, you have to remove your assumptions and make the change that's needed for individuals, and you cannot be cookie cutter. We can look at all other institutions and see what they're doing, but we had to figure out what was best for our students and the population that we were educating. So as a student, my dissertation was on first-generation college students' factors impacting retention for freshman and sophomore year. And so those things that I found, both academic and non-academic, we started looking at for adult learners. As Emily spoke of the state of Tennessee, a lot of things that she said are exactly what we're doing at Johnson C. Smith University. We have adult learners who are juggling families, they're raising children, they're taking care of their parents, they're working full-time, not part-time, but full-time, but are looking for ways to either finish a degree or start a degree. And so we looked at what people were saying and we decided to do terms instead of semesters, because adults want to come in the evening, get what they need, and get back home. As we were given these offerings, they said, you know, we want more flexibility. So once again, we listened. And in 2015, we launched our first online degree programs at Johnson C. Smith University. Within 4 years, we have been recognized as number 9 in the state of North Carolina through SRG Group for having one of the best online degree programs. That comes from listening to our students and being intentional. When we look at the students that are returning at Johnson C. Smith University, we find that the non-academic factors impact them more than their academic factors. So we started doing some research with our registrar's office, and I said, let's finish what you started. Let's reach back to our former JCSU students, and as Emily stated, find out why they didn't return to school, or find out why, if they applied, they didn't enroll. And sometimes that single communication by phone, you know, this day and age, we're used to automation. and not hearing a real voice. But just that one phone call sometimes makes the difference in that person taking that first leap of faith. So as students enroll, we say, what are those things that are preventing you from even thinking about coming back to school? Well, I don't think I can do it because I wasn't successful the first time around. And we have to remind them, you are not the person that you were before. You've lived, you've learned, you've worked, you've grown, and so now you can apply some of those experiences right in the classroom. So academically, they come in and they're okay. But then we encounter students as we get to know them, and we're intentional with getting to know them. We just started classes last night, and I walked around as dean and welcomed every class. And I reminded the new students, we are here for you. I would not be here if it weren't for you. I give them my cell phone number, and I tell them, text me anytime. I'm an unconventional dean, and you have to be that unconventional when it comes to working with adult learners. Not only do I do that, but the assistant dean and director for our e-learning online programs does the same thing. And I tell them, text me at 2 o'clock in the morning and see if I respond. Now, this is me, this is my passion, and this is my purpose. It may not be your way, but that's how we make things work at Johnson C. Smith University, because we have adult learners who are working third shift. We have adult learners who are working first shift. We have adult learners who are working second shift. And when we tell them that we're available and we're flexible, that's who we are. I may not answer completely at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I will respond and say, I hear you, and I will follow up. As of last week, we had a student excelling 3.0 above. She was hindered for starting classes because she had a bill she could not pay. The bill was only $200. Now, for many of us sitting around here, not a problem. But when you're a full-time student, you have children, you have medical issues, you have a job, and you may have an employer who is not as understanding that you're going back to school, you have to decide between $200 and my education, what am I going to do? So thankfully, we have resources on campus that are being earmarked for our adult learners, specifically scholarships that are being started, and we have administrators who are intentional about focusing in on our adult learners, and they're pretty much, what do you need? Let's figure out a way to make it happen. Fortunately, we have those connections. We were able to help that student pay that $200, but that was just one student. There's more students that have these situations, but had we not created this environment where we get to know our students and they feel comfortable enough to talk to us about personal matters, we could have lost one more. So again, in 2009, 2010, we started with 11 students. We have now graduated over 200 students in our evening program, and we are celebrating our 10th year of being intentional about educating adult learners. When we first started in 2008, 2009, I'll never forget the president stated at that time, by the year 2020, the non-traditional student will be the majority. Now, I didn't say adult learner, I said non-traditional student, meaning when we went to school, and some who are more seasoned than I am, our responsibility was to go to school. Now 18-year-olds and those older have additional responsibilities. Some intentional, some not so intentional because of socioeconomic mobility. As James Ford was speaking earlier, the cost of living alone hinders people from even thinking about going to school. So those are things that we're intentional of thinking about as our adult learners enroll. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear what's going on in their lives. That's why I walk around. That's why I randomly call and I randomly email. And it's not just me. I've been intentional with the people that we hire within Metropolitan College Professional Studies because you have to be personable. You have to move out of the way, remove any assumptions, and be available to people and listen. As we listen, we found that we need to have just as many non-academic support services as we do academic services on campus. Because these adults, they're coming back for a reason. So they're going to excel academically, but we have to help them balance those non-academic things. So one way that we've done that is we research what's called SingleStop. And SingleStop is a resource that has been so beneficial to help us alleviate a lot of the barriers that many of our adult learners encounter. They're dealing with issues when it comes to housing. They're dealing with issues when it comes to medical expenses. They're dealing with issues when it comes to things such as child care, taking care of parents, paying taxes. Some of those things that kind of come simple for us are barriers or challenges that impact their education. And we're so thankful to be one of the first HBCUs to actually establish SingleStop on our campus. And that SingleStop resource has allowed us from students stopping out at Johnson C. Smith University and being able to matriculate through to complete their degree. As far as our offerings at JCSU, we've been very strategic with what we offer our adult learners. We focus on business because we heard them say those are the degrees, that's one of the degrees we want. Criminology. We've also incorporated interdisciplinary studies, and one reason we did interdisciplinary studies is because it allows students who have gone to school before to take some of those same credits that they already have and not have to start all over again. But again, even though we provide these various offerings and we listen to the students and their needs, it's the non-academic piece that's tremendously impacting them. And I'm going to turn it over to a dear friend, Sarah Crawford, who actually leads SingleStop, one of the main initiatives that is assisting us with assisting adult learners on our campus.
That was a beautiful transition. I hope you all heard listening matters, the power of welcome, cookie cutter approaches don't work. ReConnect by phone, ReConnect by text at 2 a.m. You have to be personal. Meet Sarah. Sarah Crawford serves as the National Director of Partnerships and Programs for SingleStop. SingleStop is a national nonprofit, partners with colleges and nonprofit organizations to connect low-income individuals to resources. Sarah, we're interested in best practices, we're interested in solutions, and SingleStop has those.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning, and just feel so energized by the power that's in this room and everything we've already heard. So I just want to start by reiterating some of these national statistics. And you heard Dr. McLane share some of that, of what's going on her campus. But there's so much more research now today than there was even 5 or 10 years ago about what students are facing. 1 in 3 college students across the country are food insecure and or housing insecure. 1 in 3. And it doesn't matter, the research has shown it doesn't matter if it's an urban institution or an institution in a rural area, large, small. It doesn't know any bounds. Food and housing insecurity doesn't know any bounds because we are dealing with non-traditional students who are becoming our traditional population. 1 in 8 community college students experienced homelessness in the last year. This is significant. So when we think about what's in the way of these academic successes for our students, it's all of these other things. And you said non-academic barriers, but I'd like to challenge everybody. Let's start thinking of them as academic barriers. They are truly academic barriers because they are preventing our students from being successful. The GAO released a report back in January that looked at food insecurity among college students. And what it found is it validated this 1 in 3 number, 1 in 3 students who are food insecure. But it also said out of all the students who are food insecure, 2 million of them are eligible for food benefit, for SNAP, through SNAP, but aren't getting it. And they're not getting it for a whole host of reasons. They don't know. They don't know how to apply. They don't know it exists. They're afraid to ask because there's a stigma associated with asking for help or getting public benefits. And that's really where SingleStop comes in. So as Mebane mentioned, we are a national nonprofit, and we started with this idea being that there are millions of people living across the country living in poverty, and billions of dollars of benefits and resources that are available to folks. But the challenge really is, how do you make that connection? Because navigating social services is hard. It's hard when you have resources of time and money and networks. But what if you don't have those? It becomes incredibly difficult to get what you need to be successful. So I want to talk a little bit about our work specifically in colleges, although Mebane mentioned we also do work with nonprofit organizations. So what SingleStop set out to do is to figure out this matter of logistics, and what we created is a technology solution that works to help individuals know what they're eligible for, how much of that benefit they're eligible for, and give them the information on exactly how to apply for that benefit. And the screening takes about 10 minutes or less. And it's a simple web form, and it's available as a website, so any student can go to it and get the information that they need. And it's coupled with a local resources map that can help students connect to other supports like a food pantry or housing supports or legal supports. And all of that information gets captured in a case management tool, and that's where we work with our colleges. So we deploy this technology in partnership with our colleges, and the colleges provide the space to do this work and the staff to do this work. And let me tell you how incredibly important that staff is. We have a couple of SingleStop partners in the room, and I just want to shout them out because I see Marbeth. She's rolling her eyes at me. But Marbeth Holmes, are there others? Dina here? Oh, she's here. She's not waving her hand, but she's over there. Because the staff really make this program. SingleStop provides planning, support, training, the technology to facilitate the work, but the staff really make it happen. And they get to know those students, as Dr. McLane shared with you. They get to know those students, and they get to know their challenges, and they understand how to help them. And it's facilitated through this tool, through SingleStop. We came to North Carolina. We started as a nonprofit in 2007 in New York, but we came to North Carolina with a generous support from the John M. Belk Endowment in 2014. And we opened our first partnership with Nash Community College in October of 2015. And since 2015, we've partnered with 10 institutions across the state. And with those partners, more than 10,000 student households have been served, connected to more than $17 million in benefits and resources.
No, that's like snap.
Yeah, snap. You can snap for that. And just to give you some examples, when we talk about best practices, I want to share with you that a lot of the best practices that SingleStop has developed have come from our work right here in North Carolina. I keep calling out Marbeth at Nash, but let me tell you what Nash did. So SingleStop has this theory that if we can get people all across the campus invested in this work, we can integrate SingleStop as a part of the fabric of the college so that everybody knows about it, every student knows where to get help, every faculty and staff member knows how to refer a student. And we went to Nash, and we brought all these people together that Marbeth helped us identify, and we trained them about SingleStop, and we trained them on how to identify issues. Because, you know, not everybody on a campus knows that this is also part of their job, but it is. So we trained them all. And then Marbeth said, well, we're going to take it a step further. And she got somebody in every single building at Nash Community College trained on how to facilitate this screener so that if a student needs help, they can sit down with that individual and go through the screening portion before they make it to Marbeth's office for additional support. She trained every single person, or a person in every single building. I think she's working on every single person getting trained. But she trained a person in every single building on that campus and then gave them a placard with a SingleStop logo so that the student knew this was a safe place. This is somebody that I can ask for help. And now we've taken that all over the country and we've said, this is how you do it. This is how you do it because Marbeth did it and it's working. It is working at Nash. I want to tell you another story about James Sprent Community College. So James Sprent, you all know, is a tiny little college in Kenansville, county separated by a highway and a swamp. And they knew at James Sprent that they had a transportation challenge. They knew that students were not making it to class, but they didn't have any data to back it up. So they started collecting data through SingleStop. Now, SingleStop connects people to resources that are already existing. We're not asking for anything new. But what happens when what is needed doesn't already exist? And that's what James Sprent did. They collected a lot of data, and they took that data about the number of students who were requesting transportation assistance. They took it to their local transit authority and to the county, and they said, we have a problem. Students can't get to class. They had one student who was walking 11 miles to get to class because the bus came twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. And if you're working full-time and juggling kids, that's not enough. So they petitioned the county, they petitioned the transit authority, and they got the bus routes changed. They expanded the bus routes, and then they went to the students and they said, students, your fellow classmates need your help. And the students levied an increase on themselves to pay for every single student at James Sprent to ride the bus for free. Right? Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot that you can do with this program. And one of the things that we talk to campuses about when we first start talking to them is, what are you already doing? What are you already doing on campus? Because you're probably already doing quite a bit and you don't even know it. Let's start consolidating that. Let's start thinking through that. Let's start thinking through how students are experiencing the campus and experiencing how they get that support and making sure that there aren't unintentional barriers in the way of that support. And then we start talking about what are the gaps and how do we identify those gaps together so that you can think through who else do I need to pull into this process to really support our students. There's a book that I want to encourage everyone to read. It's called Becoming a Student-Ready College. And if you're not in a position to do something like bring SingleStop to campus, there are incremental steps that you can take to begin working towards supporting students, supporting adult learners in various ways. And Becoming a Student-Ready College is a great way to really start to look at that. It's an easy book to read. You'll fly through it, very practical, and I encourage everyone to read that. And I want to leave you with this. There's really a great opportunity at the intersection of education and social services to ensure that we are supporting our students today in a holistic way and really identify and addressing those social determinants of education. Thank you.
You see educational innovation, you see hope in the leadership of Laura and Sarah. Thank you both. We're going to be taking questions in a little bit, so text those in. I'd like you to meet Peter Hans and Andrew Kelly. Peter Hans is the president of the life-changing, economy-changing, future-oriented North Carolina Community College System. And it's been our privilege at EdNC to blitz all 58 colleges over the course of the last year. And Andrew, thank you for your leadership. Dr. Andrew Kelly is the Senior Vice President for Strategy and Policy at the University of North Carolina System. We need that now. Thanks. Yep. So we're just going to jump in here. I've got some questions for you all. Peter, you first. Post-secondary education for adults means relating to them where they are, as we've just heard, providing an experience that accounts for busy and often complicated lives of adult learners. Give us a story. Tell us a story of a community college that's getting the balance right, the balance between kind of meeting students where they are and academic rigor.
Ma'am, and I'd like to believe that all 58 of our community colleges are working towards that balance, now to varying levels of success due to leadership at that local level and the resources, of course, available to them. But the guiding philosophy of the community college system is to meet people where they are and take them as far as they can go. We have 700,000 students coming through the doors on an annual basis. The open enrollment institution, we take the top 100% of applicants at community college. We're incredibly proud of that. As a result, of course, we're going to encounter students with challenges that they need support in overcoming. And Laura and Sarah have spoken to this eloquently. But of course, life happens. Juggling work and school and family, additional challenges that may present themselves to their lives. It's incredibly inspiring to me. When I feel discouraged, I say, go work harder for these people. Help them. Our response clearly is focused to try to simplify their educational journey with guided pathways, clear steps that they can take to achieve their goals and objectives, and additional support, whether it's through advising, coaching, connecting them to resources such as SingleStop. And in fact, we're exploring a system-wide arrangement with SingleStop because we believe it's that important to all 700,000 students. When I think about adult learners in particular, I think it's true of all students, but particularly with adult learners, we know our curriculum has to be useful and relevant and engaging. The environment has to be welcoming and very flexible for them. Nights, weekends, online, in their workplace, wherever they are, we'll meet them there. And also to provide a credit for prior learning and competencies that they've already displayed to help them move from partway home to home and on the path to success.
Great. Andrew's got stories of hope for us as well. Nationally, about 37% college students are 25 or older, but many universities aren't really designed to engage students outside what we think of as the traditional young adult demographic. Mm-hmm. You've got stories of people, programs, campuses doing incredible work to create that experience for adult learners, and maybe some national models you want to lift up too.
I do have some models to talk about, but I want to start by saying that as an industry, we need to do a lot better job across the board. So I think there are some points of light that we can be optimistic about, but we as an industry have not designed ourselves around the needs of adult learners. It's pretty clear. I think our first two speakers made that clear. To help motivate the perspective from the UNC system office, I wanted to just kind of lay out some statistics, some numbers to kind of help you think through how I think about this. The first number is 2 million. How many people know what the 2 million, why 2 million is important? Because that's the state's attainment goal. Good, I see a lot of hands, that's great. That's the state's attainment goal. The state is aiming to have 2 million workers aged 25 to 44 with a credential or degree by the year 2030. We're going to be hard-pressed to get there without doing more to help the 900,000 to 1.1 million North Carolinians with some college, no degree. And then the even larger chunk of individuals with a high school diploma and no college credential or post-secondary credential. The other number I'd throw out is, from the perspective of the UNC system, we've been looking at this a lot, is 0.8%, which is the projected growth in 18 to 24-year-olds between the years of 2028 and 2038 here in North Carolina. So North Carolina is growing, right? And our university system has grown with that population growth. People are having fewer children, though. So now, this 2028 to 2038, we've got this leveling off after decades plus aggressive growth in 18 to 24-year-olds. Why does that matter to us? We're 86% 18 to 24 in the UNC system at the undergraduate level, right? We don't serve nearly the percentage of adult students that, as Mevin's statistic pointed out, nationally is the case across public higher ed or higher ed as a whole. And the last number, just to sort of help motivate this again, is 6%. So 6%, we know from looking at our data, we took DPI graduates and we matched them through the National Student Clearinghouse. So we know that 6% of DPI graduates from our public high schools in North Carolina, when they delay enrollment, so the group of students that delay enrollment for more than 2 years after high school, 6% of those students wind up at the UNC system. Just 6%. They're not looking to us for what they need. These are students that have waited to enroll. They're not coming in our direction. We know where they're going. They're going to places that are offering them much more flexible opportunities, some of which are probably very good programs, some of which are not as good. But we could do a much better job as a system of attracting those students. So what do these students need to be successful? Well, as I was sitting down to get my thoughts together, and this is going to be repetitive of a lot of what was already said, but I like to think of the world by sort of dissembling the problem. It seems to me students need an invitation to join us. Adult learners need an invitation to join us, right? We think about it as recruitment, but they really need to be invited. You have a place here. You should come back. Here's how this works. They need the ability to pay for it, right? Not just the tuition costs, but as we pointed out, a lot of the costs that are in addition to tuition, transportation, things we don't often think about, childcare. They need a program that meets them where they are. Peter spoke to this. It needs to be flexible enough that they have opportunity to earn the credit when they need to earn it, right? You need to have lots of start dates. You need to have flexible course formats. You need to deliver it probably at a distance often. And the last thing they need, and probably most importantly, is they need a straight, streamlined path from point A to point B, right? All of these notions they sound self-explanatory. They're what we would call simple, but not easy to accomplish, right? Because we have organized ourselves as an industry around traditional age students. And so what are we doing to get out in front of this? Well, a couple things, briefly. Back in 2016, the legislature gave us some one-time money to study partway home students, what we call partway home, who are students that have dropped out with a good number of credits but have stopped out and are not currently enrolled. So what do we know about students who are partway home? How can we recruit them back in? How can we help them earn a credential? No surprise when we ask partway home students, why did you stop out? Family, finances, and work commitments, right? Those things get in the way of going to traditional college, right? When we ask them, those that weren't interested in coming back to finish a BA, why weren't they interested? Similar set of things. Work commitments, and they don't see the value of a BA was the other one, to Peter's point. So what are we working on in response to that? We've got a great, very exciting partnership with the community colleges that's paid for via Illumina grant. It's the Adult Promise program, and this is my colleague Eric Fotheringham, who's in our Division of Academic Affairs, is really the force behind this program, and it's terrific. So 3 parts to that, really. One, take the Finish First initiative, which took root at Wake Tech, to scale. And originally it was to take it to scale and pilot it at 15 community colleges, but now thanks to funding from the Belk Endowment, it's going to go statewide, and that's part of this program. The second thing, training community college staff and eventually UNC staff on credit for prior learning. And how do we make sure that the credit we grant in our 2 systems for prior learning is transferable? Right? Not only you get credit at the community college, but it's also transferable. And then the third thing, which is about this invitation, is a statewide website, a statewide place where adult learners can go and learn about what the opportunities are in our 2 systems, primarily for them. Features chatbots. You can ask a question. It spits an answer back to you. And we're developing the capacity to do some coaching as well. So I encourage you all to keep an eye on that. That work is well underway, but it's going to bear more fruit as we go forward. But I want to keep everybody's eye on the ball. We need to do better as an industry, not just UNC system, but as an industry.
The power of invitation, the power of welcome.
Indeed.
Let's go back to that $2 million number, $2 million figure, which we 2 million population goal is the right word, as the state pursues the My Future and Sees attainment goal. Outline the milestones we need to achieve statewide over the next decade in order to meet the needs of adult learners. What does that look like?
Well, as Andrew said, we've got to do better. We've got to focus more on adult learners, or we'll never be able to reach that goal. Now, the My Future North Carolina effort is a coalition of business, political, educational leaders who've come together in support of 2 million more North Carolinians with high-value credentials beyond high school by the year 2030. And this has been accomplished thanks to the good offices of the Gates Foundation, the Belk Endowment, the Lumina Foundation, and the Goodnight Foundation, supporting this effort to bring us together to focus us on the fact that North Carolina needs to go from here to here in terms of educational attainment. Now, the way that's going to be measured is the 25 to 44 age demographic. Now, Mebane, that worries me a little bit because I've slipped out of that demographic, so
Me too.
I'm not sure exactly what that means. The educational experts said that's the best way to measure this, and you don't necessarily want to focus on in-migration of people who are a little bit older coming with degrees. We want to raise up our North Carolinians to the level that they need in terms of their educational credentials so they can be successful, provide for themselves and their families. But of course, reaching adult learners is more of a challenge. We've talked about the life commitments. We saw when we were polling for our first ever statewide community college marketing campaign, Your Higher Education, H-I-R-E, education designed to get you hired, that many adult learners expressed that they were uncomfortable with the idea of coming back to a college campus. And so that leads, I think, to the conclusion that, again, we must meet them where they are, in their workplace, online, nights, weekends, mornings, etc. The labor market is also very tight right now, so people are working. It's very difficult for them to say, I'm going to take a certain period of time away from these other life commitments when I have a job that I need to provide for my family. Now, this is where I think our short-term workforce training opportunities at the community college hold incredible promise. And the vast majority of students enrolled in these programs are already adult learners. Mm-hmm. These are programs that are generally 8 to 12 weeks in length, and they provide immediate employment at the other end of that program, whether you're acquiring new skills, being upskilled, reskilled, you name it, high-demand fields. And thanks to the leadership of Representative Craig Horn and others in the legislature, we've achieved parity in our program levels within the community colleges that will allow us to emphasize, really to re-emphasize those programs, those opportunities for adult learners, every North Carolinian.
Andrew, Georgia Tech and Stanford have created lifelong learning programs that keep adults engaged in continuous learning. What's the UNC system up to, and what can we look forward to?
Well, I think lifelong learning is critical, and obviously it's a emerging sort of buzzword, and this notion that universities have a relationship with their alumni, their students and their alumni over a lifetime rather than just for that 4 or 6 or 8 or however many year chunk, in the case of my dissertation. So I live in the world of the marginal dollar, right? And so the marginal dollar is, if I wanted to spend this marginal dollar to best improve our performance on a given metric or to meet a goal, where would I invest it, right? And we all live in the world of finite budgets, right? Public institutions, private institutions, certainly that are tuition dependent. We all live in this world of marginal dollars. And so, to me, this question about how do we engage more individuals that don't have that post-secondary credential yet is where we should focus our marginal dollars. And I think, and I'm not putting that up in sort of contrast to a lifelong learning approach. I think there's room for both. But I think the challenge of focusing, say, Stanford and Georgia Tech sometimes that's also sort of an alumni giving strategy, right? You create the courses, they're available, people can join, they feel better about their university, and they donate. From the perspective, I think of from my perspective as a policy analyst primarily, I think we ought to focus those resources first and foremost on those individuals right now who are struggling to get ahead because they don't have the training and the skills and the credential they need. So one of the things I wanted to sort of make sure that I cite is a few really promising examples from our system along these lines. One of which is right here in Charlotte, the 49er Finish program at UNC Charlotte. Do we have any UNC Charlotte representatives here? I'm sure we do. Yeah. Yep, over there. So 49er Finish is a program that sounds a lot like what Johnson C. Smith is working on, and it is literally an invitation for former UNC students who have UNCC students who have stopped out to come back to get enrolled in a flexible program and finish that credential. They've graduated thousands of graduates, over 1,000 graduates over the past 10 years or so. Another one that I would cite is the Aggies at the Goal Line, which is another program at A&T, North Carolina A&T, where you find students that are just on the cusp of finishing. You go out, you recruit them back, you enroll them in a flexible online program, they get the credits they need, and they finish. Not to knock at all the continuing ed or the lifelong learning concept. I think for people to be best equipped to benefit from lifelong learning, they need to have that first credential, right? So I think we ought to start there, and then and at the same time create opportunities for others to come back and skill build and so on.
So we've talked a lot about all of the things that we can do to support adult learners. How can community colleges and universities shift their approaches now that we've identified the challenge, and think about supporting academic services, but all of the things that students need to help us move forward on this goal?
A question for me?
It's for everybody. Y'all jump in.
Well, I think we're already making those shifts and things that are necessary by just being here and engaging at this time. But we have to be more intentional at the leadership level of really rolling up our sleeves and not just convening, but actually doing. A lot of times we go into sessions and things of that nature and say, hey, this is what we want to do, but we have to make sure that we're seeing it through and looking at the KPIs and things of that nature. We also need to do a better job of truly working collaboratively. I know every institution from community colleges to four-year universities, we all have our goals, our objectives, the numbers that we're trying to meet. But do we want our students to just be a number, or do we want to know our students and know that we are assisting them with success? I know right now that we were working collaboratively with Central Piedmont Community College to work with not only their advising department, but admissions as well, to remind them, once students finish their associates, if they're interested, let's bridge the gap and open the door for them to matriculate onto a four-year program. Don't just stop with that first step of, okay, I've gotten this associate's degree. If it's in you to drive you, go ahead and continue. So I think the collaboration is very important. We also have to break down things more strategically for adult learners and dispel a lot of myths. There's a lot of myths about private institutions, and I'm speaking candidly from an HBCU. Students sometimes don't select certain institutions, and they may be better suited for them, but they choose another because of cost. So we're a private institution. However, with our adult learner program, we have created a fee structure that is cheaper than our traditional day program. So we have to truly educate, whether we're a community college or a four-year college, educate and clearly define information in layman's terms for adults to return and be successful.
So we're here, we're having the conversation. You've seen a lot of different examples of collaboration, which hasn't always been the case. Sarah, you've challenged us to rethink how we think about academic barriers. You want to say a little more about that?
Yeah, so, I think for a long time, and you all know this because you have fought it, for a long time we thought about our jobs in colleges as we're here to educate. We're not here to be a social services agency. But what I'm challenging everyone to do is to start saying, no, this is our responsibility. This is our responsibility because these are academic barriers to success. When you are hungry, when you don't have a safe place to sleep, when you don't know whether or not you can stay in school or not because of a $200 bill, those are academic barriers to success. We're all in this room because we know that, we feel it, we see it, and we know what happens when we start to treat students holistically and when we start to address those barriers. But there are a lot of places that aren't there yet. And there are people who are trying to do good things, but they don't always have the support. Whether they're at the leadership level and they don't have the resources they need to invest in these solutions, or when they're in the trenches trying to do things from the ground up, but their presidents and their deans aren't clearing the way for them. And I see that across North Carolina, and I see that across the country. And so I think we have to be really honest about what our students are facing, what our goals are for those individual students, not just a number, and start to put resources where it matters, where it's really going to move the needle into these various programs that you've heard about today.